We like to call it the Supernatural Hour. And now, our hosts.
Okay, so our main topic today is 411 missing phenomenon. Have you guys heard of this before?
I hadn't.
I had heard of it before, I just didn't know it had this name.
Yeah, I had heard, people missing and strange occurrences, but I've
Right.
never heard of 411 missing phenomenon.
But that was
as a
kind of
thing.
given. I think that's just a given title by the author.
Right, I don't know if it's... But it's interesting because... So these, basically, in layman's terms, it's these people that go out in the woods and they go missing and then they come back, but it's really weird. But there's some actual criteria it has to follow to be one of these 411 cases. So...
Did you guys hear where the origin of the term 411 comes from?
No.
Yes, I did.
No, I didn't.
It comes from, it's computer lingo. You should know this, Chad. They said the origins comes from an inconspicuous computer term that refers to data that cannot be found or a corrupted link. So there you go.
Yeah, I read that and I was like,
Thanks, Doc.
When data can't be found. 411.
Yeah, because 411 usually means information, but that makes more sense. So, a couple of things. The disappearance has to occur in a national park, a rural area, or a large reserve of public land. So, if you're downtown in Chicago or something, it doesn't count. You've got to kind of be out in the
You just
out in
got
the boonies.
kidnapped at that point.
Right. There has to be exceptionally odd circumstances surrounding the disappearance. And mental illness or voluntary disappearance does not appear to be the cause.
Right, so it can't be explainable by the just crazy.
Right.
Right. The vast majority of these disappearances occur on clearly marked and popular hiking trails. Not always, because oftentimes it involves children, but many times, more often than not, the victims are proficient. That's a hard word to say. Wow. Proficient outdoorsmen and women, hikers, hunters, people that know the terrain, know how to be outdoors, are usually prepared to be outside, know the backwoods really well. But there's no real answers. I mean, no one knows. So we'll get into some of the stories of, a few things that they think have happened. One of the other things, and I thought I had this in my notes, but I can't find it. I must have cut it out. But it also said that a lot of times there's little cluster areas. And one thing that's common in these cluster areas is a large area of granite and water. And so one of these cluster areas is actually Yosemite National Park in California, because it's granite, there's a lot of water, and so this is one of the areas that it tends to happen a lot.
Right. I was reading that they can cluster from 3 to 70 to 80 disappearances in one area.
Yeah. So sorry if you were planning on going to Yosemite this summer. Totally just bummed you out. Sorry.
Oh, man.
There's something there. We're not sure what, but there's something there.
Okay, so I have just a couple little short stories here, and these all happened at Yosemite. So there's a gal named Stacy, and this happened in 1981. She was about 14 years old. She's on a horse riding trip with her father. A lot of her other friends are there with her, and they're in Yosemite, and they're just having this, let's go to Yosemite, ride our horses, have a good time, kind of a deal. And after they had gotten to their camp, Stacy decided she was going to clean up and take a walk. I am not a horse rider, but I can imagine after riding a horse for a while, you'd probably want to stretch your legs a little bit. And so she's 14. I wouldn't call a 14-year-old super experienced, but she's old enough to know not to go traipsing off into the woods by herself. So she asked her dad, asked a couple of the friends, hey, do you want to come walk with me? And they're like, no, we're tired. Just, we don't want to go. So she said, okay, that's fine. Since no one's going to go with me, I'm just going to go down to the lake, stretch my legs, take a few pictures. I'll be right back. And the lake was not that far away. The lake was actually within earshot of where they were. And it wasn't in an area that was known for, bears or cougars or any, wildlife. And So the dad said, I didn't really think much about it. It's within earshot. I'm not really worried about it. So she went on her short walk, was never seen again. And they had searches lasting about 9 days. They had hundreds of people, sniffer dogs, helicopters, and the only thing that was ever found of her was her lens cap from her camera. And this one is one where they were never found, but there are stories that sometimes they come back with some pretty incredible stories of things that they've seen.
And sometimes they don't even remember. They have no idea how they ended up. But when I was reading, 95% of something that they have common in cases is that canines can't find them.
Right.
So that's a common factor.
Yeah,
Dogs
they'll follow a scent for a certain length of time. I saw some where they even saw this little kid's shoe prints, in the sand, and then it was just gone. And there weren't other shoe prints around, and there weren't rocks, and it was just like,
something had
he
picked
took a
up the
step
child,
and
it was gone.
It was gone.
Yeah, there's a fellow that they call Mystery Man. This was in 1968, and in early August of 1968, just this man's body turned up in a crevice, and it was not very far from the Sunrise High Sierra camp, which is also where Stacy, the one we just talked about, had been. And the man had never been identified. They still don't know who he is, which is why he's called the Mystery Man. But as they analyzed his body to try to determine a cause of death, obvious signs that they usually look for, like the blunt force trauma, multiple broken bones, suggesting that he may have fallen or, been beat up by a bad guy, by an unsub. If you watch Criminal Minds, we're watching that right now. So, the bad guys, unsub. There was nothing. They have no idea. Why he would be there.
That's like the opposite of the last story. You had a girl who disappeared and they never found it. Here you have a body and you go, how'd that get there?
Right? He could be missing from somewhere else, and this whatever popped him down in the wrong area. Because, a lot of times they're found, if they are found, they're found in really weird areas or very far from where they were taken.
Right. From what I understand, there's thousands of cases of missing people in these, areas, these parks and forests. I don't know what percentage of them pop back up versus stay missing forever.
Right, just in this little hot spot, and we won't go through the whole story because they're actually really short. They just disappeared. But there was a Timothy Barnes in 1988, and there was a fellow named Jeff Estes in 1976. All in the same area, all just disappeared. So that's why they think that, there's these little hot spots. There's just things like this. There's just so many people in the same area that just go missing mysteriously.
So as you were doing your research, did you come up with any of your stories of people that had been found recalling where they had been, or any idea of where they'd gone? So
there was one that we actually watched a YouTube video on, and Chad, you can jump in on this if I get stuff wrong, because I do that often. A little girl had gone missing, and she had been missing for a couple days. And when they finally found her, they found her miles and miles away from where she had disappeared. And she was just sitting there like.
Is this the one that she was in her flip-flops and swimsuit? And
I think so.
And, she had a few scratches, but it was like 5 or 6 miles where
and was
she
she
was
up
found.
On a cliff?
I think so.
Yeah, and they could not figure out how she could have gotten there. Even just based on what her flip-flops looked like, they're like, in order for her to get here, those would have just been torn to shreds.
Right.
And they asked her how she got there, and she said, my imaginary friend helped me, and the imaginary friend had a name.
Yeah, Alyssa or Lisa, something like that.
Yeah, Alyssa, and there's several other stories that
there's a point on that one, on the imaginary friend, because in the same area in 1928, a little 4-year-old girl had died and went missing in that same area. And
her name was Alyssa.
Alyssa, or very, very close. It wasn't quite exact, but it's one of those things. And this girl said, yeah, she helped me get down, here, and she, told me where to go, and she helped. And it's like, and this girl had never had an imaginary friend before coming to this situation, and never had the imaginary friend after
After.
coming to the situation.
And in several other stories that I read, they always are talking about like a shadowy person or, a big tall person. It seems like oftentimes when people recall where they've been, the people that have been found, there's always somebody there that has helped them.
And many times there's no recollection of the time being lost at all.
Yeah, and sometimes the people didn't even realize they were lost. The people come to find them, and they're like, "Oh, we found you. Oh, where have you been?" And they say, "I
Here?"
haven't gone anywhere."
And they
this-
go, yeah, but it's like 4 days later.
Yeah, it's like 4 days later. We've had hundreds of people searching for you. We thought you were dead, and they're like, "No."
Kind of reminds me of the fire in the sky incident in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember the last name of the guy. I think it was Travis was his first name. That went missing for several days and then came back and, wrote a book actually about his alien abduction
Oh, okay.
and all of, the
I-
things that happened while he was gone. But I'm trying to remember. I think when he came back, he didn't really have much recollection until he was
Was he like
hypnotized.
walking on the street, like kind of found himself just walking down a
I'm trying to remember.
highway? I think I just heard that story like yesterday.
Really? There's a movie about it, which is an interesting film if you haven't seen
And
it.
there's like 3 or 4, like he was with a group of people,
Mhm.
and they all kind of had the same recollection of him leaving and levitating up, kind of a thing, and they ran. And
Yeah,
left
they
it.
ran away from it. Yeah, I think that's the
Yeah.
case.
Yeah, another thing they say is oftentimes the bodies will be found, like we mentioned before, with no. I mean, they cannot figure out why this person passed away. And when they do find them, oftentimes they'll find them in an area just within a few hundred feet of where the person went missing, and there's no reason whatsoever that those initial researchers should not have found them
Yeah,
the first time.
the rescue team, search and
Uh-huh.
rescue, wasn't able to find them.
Yeah, in fact, they talk
Yeah.
about one fellow named Ronald Kirk, and this was just as recent as 2012. And he was a runner and a former Marine. And he was in a place called the Red Rock Canyon Calico Basin. And he went missing in late January of 2012. And he had a history of spending time in this area. It wasn't a first-time thing. He was, in this area all the time. And so he told his friends, "Hey, I'm going here," and none of them were concerned because they're like, he goes there all the time, not a big deal. But then no one saw him alive again. And, so they put out the search. Search and rescue teams finally found him months later, and he was just in a spot that was surrounded by established trails. I mean, it wasn't like out in the brush. He was about 200 meters from a really popular spot called the Turtlehead Peak Route. And they said that the delay of his discovery was just an optical anomaly. So, because they're not thinking, oh, aliens and weird things. They're like, it was, the body blended in with the pigment in the soil. But what makes this strange is, okay, yeah, a body I can buy that. His clothes, just mingled in with the surrounding area. But since there was no definitive cause of death, and the fact that it wasn't like, miles away in just the outback, it was right there where trails were. I mean, to the point that if, one of us had just gone traipsing around,
You might have found it.
you might have found him. Not might have, you would have,
Right.
kind of a thing. So that's why he is considered a 411, because there's no reason they couldn't have found him the first time they went looking.
I watched one where they talked about a guy that was at, I think it was Lake Michigan or Lake Superior, one of the Great Lakes. And he was out snowshoeing and doing those things, and he told his family what was going on and everything. And he didn't show up. And when they went out looking for him, they followed his trail out through the snow, and then it stopped as it goes towards one of the Great Lakes. I think it was Michigan, but I'm not sure. And this was in like February. And, there wasn't anything. And, it could have been that the snow blew over the tracks and at a certain point and wouldn't do it. But, some people thought, well, maybe he'd committed suicide. There wasn't other tracks out there, anything else. And 9 days later, he showed up in San Francisco.
A little ways away.
Wow.
And he had no recollection of how he got there.
From snowshoeing in Michigan.
Really?
Yeah, and it was like, okay, and it's like, there was something of, well, maybe he had been drugged by somebody in a trucker and taken across, because that's about how long it would take. I mean, they're trying to think of what would be the things that, could
Some
make the
plausible
situation
reasons.
plausible.
Plausible-ish.
But it's like, he had no recollection and he was disoriented. It's like, what am I doing? Here, and he was, clear across the country. Very interesting.
That's a good one.
I will say, looking at theories behind the missing 411 phenomenon, it runs the gambit. It's like anything from Bigfoot to aliens to satanic cult to MK Ultra. I mean, it is
Yeah, serial killers.
serial killers.
Yeah,
It's
mini wormholes, where
It
you
can be anything.
you name
space-time
it, it's
changes.
Different time realms. Big. They say that a bird could have come down and picked up some of these kids and flew them up the cliff.
when your most plausible explanation is a bird picked up a child and flew them to the
Right?
top of a mountain.
That's
it is
the
kind of
best.
weird.
But the kids
more or
were
less
okay,
left
so it's
them alone.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, didn't
the best you can
rip
do,
their,
huh?
Their flesh off.
Now, they
Right.
did say that, interestingly enough, UFO sightings often correlate with these hotspots. So the
Right.
places where these hotspots are, where the 411 missing occurs,
Okay.
is also places where people claim to see a lot of UFO activity.
Is there a connection?
Is there? That's the big question.
It's aliens. It's always aliens.
Oh man.
So does David Pilates, that's Pilates. I call
Pilates
it
or something
Pilates.
else,
That's
It's
right?
like an exercise.
That's, let's cut that out.
No,
of it.
let's
We don't
not.
want him to hear that. So he's got 9 books out, 1,900 case studies right now. I mean, it just keeps going and going and going. And he's got his own podcast called the Can-Am Project. I tried to listen to he's a little hard to listen to him tell the story. He doesn't kind of tell it as well as
He's
Mr.
not a good
Ballen.
storyteller?
He's
And
not.
Mr. Who? Mr. Ballen?
Mr. Ballen. I like Mr. Ballen. He's a good storyteller.
He's got some good YouTube stories about
He's a
different things.
good
I
storyteller.
found many of his very interesting.
Yeah, we could do a podcast just on what Mr. Ballen does.
Yeah, but the Pilates guys, he knows his stuff. He wrote 9 books.
Pilates.
No, Pilates.
Come on, man. Don't do that to me.
You know
I
that
think
if
that's going to be your thumbnail.
Pilates.
The Pilates.
Pilates guy and missing kids.
Great. Great. So some of the stories that I found, like where they found them, but then they would find them and they were nude. Or like I had one lady, she was nude and she was upside down in a river. And when they did her autopsy, they said she didn't die from hypothermia, but yet the autopsy says that she died from hypothermia because they really don't know her cause of death. So that was one of the things that I found a lot in common with a lot of the stories I ran into is the things that people were putting themselves through, and then they would find their deceased body. So a lot of it was nudity, or like they wouldn't find guns, they wouldn't find things, and all of their clothes would be gone, everything's gone, but they're naked somewhere, usually in water, with their face submerged. It's almost like they've been tossed, just kind of tossed aside, maybe by an alien out of a spaceship.
Right.
It's always
I mean,
aliens.
I don't know.
They just said.
It's just the easiest answer is just to say, the aliens got them, and
If you've ever watched Ancient Aliens, it's
And-
always aliens.
I have,
Who built the pyramids? Aliens.
of course.
So I'm going to go back. You remember how I said I couldn't find my notes on the granite and the water? I found
Yeah.
them. I thought it was at the
Okay.
beginning. It's at the end of my notes, not the end of that. We'll still talk about this. But it says many of these instances occur near bodies of water, which is what you just said, Rogue, around granite boulders. And then there's also a strangely small amount of distance between where the victims are found. You know, it's not hundreds of miles, you're not kind of in the area. It's the same campground. It's within hundreds of feet of where the last one was found. And it said, for instance, the first story that we told about Stacy, the horseback rider, and Ronald Kirk, the next one that we talked about, they were all outdoorsy, adept people, and they both just went a short ways away from where they had intended to be, and they were both near bodies of water, and the cabin that was in the area was surrounded with large granite boulders.
What does it mean?
Right? So the granite's conducting something to the aliens?
I don't know. But going into aliens, and I've been trying to think of where this was. I want to say Shiprock, but I don't know that you can just climb up Shiprock.
Yeah, I don't think they love it. It's kind of a sacred place.
Anyway, but it was like a Shiprock or Devil's Tower, one of those famous giant rock things. That a little boy went climbing up, and he was found. I mean, he came back down. He was gone for about a week, and to his knowledge, he wasn't gone at all. To his knowledge, he went up. I mean, his story was he hiked up, got lost, and kind of sat down and cried because he was scared. And some people came, and he said there were several, like a handful or so of people. He says that they were very tall. He described them as tall and shadowy, and they took him to a cave. And I actually, this is a story I read a long time ago, so I don't remember what he said that they did in the cave, but it was nothing creepy. I mean, it wasn't like probing or anything creepy. I think they just played with him for a little while, and then to kind of calm him down like you would with a child. Look at the teddy bear, look at the bouncy, just trying to get him to laugh and calm down. And he said that they played for a little while, and then at one point, one of them, he kind of described them as dark and shadowy, not like dark skin, but like more like shadows, like shadowy dark. And one of them took his hand and walked him back down the mountain, and said, "Sit on this rock, and someone will come find you." And sure enough, like within a couple hours, the sheriff's department found him. And, he thought he'd been gone for 15 minutes, but he'd been gone for like a week.
It's an odd story. We got shadow people now? Man.
Yep.
Look at all these theories we've got.
Still sounds alien-ish.
So there is the possibility that there's what he calls a smoke screen. We're going back to Mr. Pilates.
The Pilates guy. All right.
He's never going to forgive us if he hears this,
I know. How do we
He's
pronounce
probably
his actual
never
name?
heard it before, right?
Politis.
I know, but people will remember him.
Politis sounds like
he should thank us.
an infection.
Detective Politis.
Anyway.
I have politis.
But he said that oftentimes different government agencies will come in and investigate these, but they don't work together. And part of me gets it. Part of me is like, okay, well, you're doing your own investigation. But he said one time the FBI came, National Guard came, looking for a missing child in 2013, and then a forest ranger. And he said it was so different. They wouldn't even talk to each other. They wouldn't even talk to the parents. It's almost like...
It's like a formality. Like, we're out here looking for your kid, but we're not really looking
almost
for
like,
your kid.
almost like, if you can't see, if I can't see you, you can't see me. Almost like if we don't talk to you, then you don't know we're here. And I don't know. Coming from a law enforcement family, it's like, well, they just don't want to contaminate their own evidence, and I don't know, get ideas from other people that I don't know. But it does seem strange that you wouldn't say, "Oh, hey, you're looking for the kid too. What information do you have? This is what we have. Maybe we can collaborate together."
We don't want to share information.
Well, and then when I was reading too, they were saying that on some of these cases the FBI come out, but the FBI don't search for missing people. So what are the FBI doing coming out to some of these cases?
Do you not watch Criminal Minds?
I do sometimes, but is that real life?
Of course, it's on TV.
Okay. All right. Okay. Uh-huh.
I don't know. I don't know the inner workings of the FBI.
I don't either. But that was something that when I was going through that was on one of the cases. It's like the FBI don't look for missing people. So what are the FBI doing here? They have bigger things to do.
Not unless there's an
alien.
extenuating circumstance, or if they think it might be
Alien.
an alien, yes.
If it
or
crosses state borders.
crosses state
That's the Men in
borders.
Black, guys. We're looking for the Men in Black.
Exactly.
No, the FBI can, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, but to my knowledge, the FBI can come in if it crosses state borders, serial killers, if they're invited in by somebody.
Just like a spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And most of my knowledge might come from Criminal
Criminal Minds.
Criminal Minds.
So take that with Take my knowledge with a giant grain of salt.
Wow. That's funny.
The FBI are
Or
the
so.
ghosts of law
Some
enforcement.
FBI guy is
Ooh.
listening to this going, oh my gosh, just shut up, Rita.
Right?
Shut up.
Go do your Pilates.
That's right. Talk to Pilates guy.
Okay. Do we have anything more we want to add about this? I found this very interesting. There's some creepy stories out there.
I just keep going and going with it. I don't know. It's something that I've kind of rabbit holed. But the stories, they have so many commonalities that you can just keep telling the stories, but it's kind of the same story because they're so
Right.
common.
Well, and yet there's variations on the theme in lots of ways. I mean, I did one where it was a brother and a sister that were out fishing, went to a fishing hole. They got separated. They didn't find the sister for quite a while. The brother finally made his way out of the woods and got home, and they asked where's the sister, and he said something like he dropped him off at the aunt's, and they checked with the aunt, and he had never been there. Just things going on, and when they finally got with the sister, they did finally find her like a week later. And these were older, mid-20 kinds of kids, not children. But she was like, yeah, I went into this area and I saw the woods, and it's like I saw these beings, and it was kind of described as almost Bigfootish or
Aliens.
yeah, but they would hide behind a tree or gorilla kind of things, and you've heard kind of some bears and different things as far as the different entities, the shadow people. There's so many different variations on it, but it's hard because once you've watched a lot of these different stories, they start melding into each other,
They
and it's
do.
hard to keep them straight, although they're all unique in their own way.
Right, I agree.
And it
That's
just,
hard.
for me, it's like there's just enough commonalities in it that it's like there's something there. We don't know what it is, but something
There's
is going
something.
on.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is there's something. So you would have children that are small and abducted or whatever's happening to them, telling you stories when they're found, like of the gorilla or the bear. How would a child come up with those types of stories? So it's something. But then when do a gorilla and a bear work together? And aliens,
And not eat children.
right? And feed them berries. But something was happening because they're not malnourished. They're not dehydrated. Like these kids are taken care of.
And then
so-
there's the missing time.
right, and the missing time, right. So I'm down to aliens, time.
Some type of parallel universe
Parallel
portal
universe?
thing. Yeah,
Like
maybe.
it totally could be. I guess. I mean, it could be anything of anything, but it's something. Just like with everything else we do, it could be anything, but it's something.
Right. And like every topic we do, there is, I mean, we could talk about this for hours and talk about different stories. If this is something that you find very interesting, hop onto the internet, hop onto Google 411 missing phenomena, and see what's out there.
And David Pilates, not Pilates.
Pilates.
And
is
Mr.
easy to
Baller?
say.
Mr. Ballin.
Ballin?
Yeah, it's John B. Allen. So it's Mr. Ballin.
He's
a
on
former
YouTube?
Navy
YouTube.
SEAL. He's on YouTube. He's on TikTok. He's on Instagram. And he's a really great storyteller. I like supporting him. He's a Navy SEAL. He's a very good storyteller. And he's the one that got me going on this 411 phenomenon. He tells a really good story. And he shows a lot of pictures, and he gets pretty in-depth with some of those as well. I don't mind giving him a shout out. He's earned it.
Awesome.
Mr. Ballin.
Mr. Ballin.
Well, thanks for listening. Last, get your Supernatural Hour swag at advancedparanormal.com. As always, we have a whole bunch of stuff available. Notebooks.
Wow.
Do they have pencils? We should make pencils.
Probably.
That'd be pretty sweet. Mugs,
I have wisps pencils.
tapestries, flags, t-shirts,
And
bumper
we have our
stickers,
tapestry back up in the studio.
and the tapestries back up. But man, send your kid back to school with a Supernatural Hour notebook and possibly a pen or pencil.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
That would be pretty
You
sweet.
guys would be the coolest kid in school.
I'm going to do it.
And check out our shop at the Advanced Paranormal, where you can get all sorts of cool merchandise like sage sprays with lavender, lip balm, essential oils. At our investigation at the Barbary Coast, we had those there, and we had a lot of people that purchased those items because they smelled them and used them and thought, wow, these are awesome. So
Yeah, and the sage sprays have been flying off the shelf, literally. We need to make some more, so.
and we know the person that makes those.
I know, she's sitting right here. We have exciting news about our YouTube. We have gotten over 100 subscribers, so we thank you.
Yay!
If you haven't subscribed yet, keep subscribing. Get your friends to
Thank you.
subscribe. Pretty soon we can have a short name. YouTube has to realize that we have over 100 subscribers, but we'll get that shorter name. And TikTok, I put stuff up on TikTok that doesn't always find its way onto the Facebook page. Not on purpose, but you're going to see different things if you head over to TikTok. So Castle's Nature Studio, he recently went to Hawaii, and so I know he's going to have some awesome pictures of Hawaii on his website. But if you need some family portraiture, I've been waiting to say that word for a long time.
Portraiture. Ooh, fancy.
You said it very well.
Thank you. If you need your picture taken, give Castle a ring-eating. He does a good job.
And if you need your dogs groomed, check us out at Rescue Pets Bathhouse, featuring Utah freeze-dried for pets. We love your dogs from the inside out.
And then Boar Off-Road, Backcountry Off-Road Adventure Rally. Hey, they have a longest name as Wasatch Investigative Society Paranormal Studies. They are a great group. If you're into jeeping and getting out in that backcountry, they are your group. But one thing I love about them is they really put their heart and soul into community service projects. And they helped us with Merker, and they were very recently up doing something, I think at Cascade Falls, or something up in the
Cascade Springs.
Cascade something with the word Cascade in it. But they are always doing service projects, to the point that I think, do you really do any jeeping? I actually see them pictures of jeeping, so they do. But they do a lot of service. They give back to the community a lot.
And also, if you're in the Payson area, Dalton Steakhouse is a great place to get a great meal. And Oteo's in Orem
And Linden.
and Linden. Well, they're right. I mean, Orem and Linden, it's kind of the same.
But there's two separate places, so like if you don't like the Orem, you can go to Linden.
There you
Yeah,
go.
it's like 3 blocks.
But we've eaten there a couple times, and it's super good. So if you like tacos, what would you call them? They're kind of gourmet tacos, gourmet Mexican food. It's not your standard
Street
tacos.
taco.
street taco. It's like the fancy street tacos, and I can't remember what it was that I had, but it was delicious. So go check them out. And we will be investigating there again, hopefully the end of the year. So if you missed that investigation, watch for it because it's coming up.
That's at Dalton's.
Yes, not Oteo's, at Dalton's. Same owner, different store. All right, stay spooky, my haunty friends.
I love you, Nicholas.
Have a good one.
Hey, good night.
You've been listening to the Supernatural Hour at AdvancedParanormal.com. The Supernatural Hour is part of the Radio Ronin network, found at RadioRonin.com. Copyright 2021 by Advanced Paranormal Services.